I've noticed a little weird thing that sometimes happens to people. It happened to me when I was younger, but I eventually grew out of it for the most part, but there is a chance that growing out of it is not something that most people do. Perhaps most people stay in some perpetual state when it comes to their overall social awareness, and don't move past the superficial understanding of society as a whole. What I'm talking about is that people often focus on just their lives, and just the things that matter to them only, the things that they are concerned with, the things that they want to achieve, the things that they want to do, the places that they want to go, and how other people are treating them. I remember vaguely reading somewhere about main player syndrome. It's like a person sees the world in a way that it exists only for them. As if they are the only real person that matters, and everyone else is just an NPC. You see this a lot in small children, especially toddlers. The world just evolves around them, and they don't understand that other people have their own thoughts and feelings, and likes and dislikes, and their own needs, that are just as relevant as their own, but from their perspective. They are the only ones that really matter, and everyone else just exists to entertain them in one form or another. Now most people do eventually grow out of it, and start to recognize that the world isn't just about them, but there are also many people such as narcissists, or people with sociopathic tendencies, that seem to still run on that same program. In their minds, the world exists just for them. What disturbs me is that even normal people, who have grown out of it for the most part, still retain some level of the sense that they are the most important person, and everything else is not as relevant as what is going on in their life. I do understand that you are the most important person in your own life, because no one knows you as well as you do, and no one really cares about you as much as you do, because it is your own life after all. But when you expand your awareness not just to the superficial realization that there are more people in the world, and each one of them has a life just as significant as your own, and your story is not the best story, it is just one of billions of other stories being simultaneously told at the same time, through the lives of all of those people living them. It's a lot easier to see the suffering in the world, when you expand your awareness far beyond your own life, and start to see humanity as a whole, and how other people's lives are just as significant as your own. You start to care less about your own wants, needs and desires, and take into account the situation that all of humanity is in. Which is also why I like history so much, because studying history gives you a perspective that a normal mortal wouldn't typically be able to have, since our lifespans are so short. Studying history gives you the perspective of someone who has lived for thousands of years, because you can read the writings of people that lived centuries before you, and read what it was like for them to live their lives, and what they went through. And that can give you a great deal of insight into your own life. I think this is where most people tend to stop though. They will study history and humanity to a point, but then they'll go back to their normal lives, and focus on achieving whatever dreams that they are chasing. They still seem to hold this main player mentality in their heads. Perhaps we can't help that, as humans, we have this weird sense of self, this weird sense of consciousness, that other animals don't have. At least not to the degree that we do. You don't see a dog sitting there, contemplating its own existence. It doesn't think about its existence, it simply exists from moment to moment, without giving much thought to any of it. Most animals can't understand their own mortality, and the fact that they will inevitably die one day. I think this knowledge is what really messed humans up to some degree, because that is a huge burden to have to carry on your back. I'm reminded of Ecclesiastes 1:18, for in much wisdom is much grief, he who increases his wisdom, also increases his sorrow. Perhaps that's the reason why people don't like to think about things too deeply. It's bad enough to have to live your whole life knowing that you're going to die one day. So I guess most people just suppress or ignore the things that they don't want to think about too much, because if they did, they would be constantly uncomfortable, if not completely depressed. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, the simple fact that we know about our own mortality does affect us, even if on a subconscious level. Which is why I believe there are so many religions in the world. So many different ways that cultures throughout history have done their very best to battle the existential dread that is constantly nipping at their heels. Okay, back to my main point. Maybe it's because I have given up on most of my youthful hopes and dreams, and started to see the world in a more realistic, if not slightly pessimistic way, that has opened the door for me to suffer with a hyper awareness of the world around me. I'm not kidding, sometimes being too aware of the world, and what's going on in it, can be debilitating. There are days when I just want to curl up in my bed and hide from the world, safely tucked away in my fortress of pillows and blankets. It's strange that even though it gives me a great deal of grief, I still wouldn't want to go back to the way I was. The way I was when I was an ignorant young teenager. That said, there's a part of me that still misses it so much. Perhaps that's just the nostalgia of a time long past, or maybe just me clinging to the memory of my youth. I remember there is a phrase that Night Owl often uses. She said she started using it when she was about 20, and hasn't stopped since then. She often says that she would rather live a life full of agony and misery, knowing the truth of the world, and what it is, than live a life blissfully happy while living a lie. I also seem to choose the uncomfortable truth over the comfortable lie, and boy do I suffer tremendously for that choice. Maybe it's not even a choice at all. If free will is truly a limited thing, then perhaps we are simply just playing out the scenarios that were already set before us, and I simply am who I am, and not who I chose to be. Maybe I had no say in any of it. To tell you the truth, that's kind of a relieving thought. It definitely takes the burden of guilt off your back, knowing that no matter what you did, you wouldn't have been able to change the outcome of most of the events in your life. Because they were going to happen to you regardless of what you did. All you can do is recognize what happened, and move on from it, and hope that the future won't be as messed up as the past was. In a way, life is something that is happening to us, we are not happening to it, so we kind of end up as bystanders in our own life. Personally, I find that tragically sad. The comedian Bill Hicks used to say that life is just a ride, and we get on that ride when we're born, and we just ride it out. All the twists and turns that happen in our life, we are simply passengers in the little passenger seat, unable to really change the course. And all of the real choices are actually just illusions that make us feel like we have more power than we really do. So we stay on this ride and we look around at the scenery, and enjoy the hills and the twists and turns, until one day, it's time for us to get off the ride, and then we return to that eternal nothingness, from which we all came. I can see how some people can twist that in a positive light, and say enjoy your life while you can, when you can, and try to enjoy the moments until they are gone, and enjoy your life, until it's gone. But here's my problem with that. For almost 14 billion years I did not exist. I did not care that I did not exist. I had no dreams. I had no desires. I had no wants. I had no needs. For 14 billion years I was good. Then all of a sudden I exist. I have a body. I have a consciousness. I have a sense of awareness. I have feelings. I have hopes and dreams and desires. Well, at least I used to. I am now capable of experiencing pain, misery, and suffering, to which I've had my fair share of, all because someone brought me into this world, with their own act of carelessness. One day, I will return again to that emptiness, that void of nothingness, and will no longer care or need, or want anything ever again, for the entire existence of the universe, which might be hundreds of trillions of years to come. The thing is, for me personally, there is no amount of joy, happiness, pleasure, or excitement that I have ever experienced in my life that justifies bringing me into existence in the first place. Like I said, before I was born, I did not care about any of it, and would have continued to not care about any of it, until I was brought into this waking nightmare called life. For me personally, no amount of joy that I've experienced in my life can make up for the crime of bringing me here in the first place. I could have done without all of this. Now it's even worse of a crime, because now that I'm here I know that I will one day lose my sense of self, my consciousness, and everything that I've ever learned, and everything that I've ever cared about. It'll all just be gone. It's like someone hitting the delete button on my entire brain, wiping out everything, every part of me that I considered me, would just be deleted, gone forever, until the end of time. Even if I didn't ask for this life, and would have rather not been born, the fact that this life will be forcefully ripped from me one day, against my will, also gives me a sense of dissatisfaction and anger.
Hey Valerie, I hope I'm not interrupting, but you have every right to be upset. Life cheated us all. We all got cheated. None of us asked to be here, and none of us deserve the terrible things that sometimes happens to us. Life has never been fair, and there is no real justice in life, and the universe doesn't have some divine plan or purpose for any of us. We all just got thrown into this existence because our parents got horny. That's it. That's the only reason. That's why most people in our day-to-day lives don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. And when you do try to bring it up to them, they immediately become uncomfortable and quickly want to change the subject as fast as possible. The truth of life and existence is not a pretty story. It's not something that brings comfort and joy in someone's life. All it brings you is to the cold, desolate realization of the pointless futility of your own existence, and the understanding that the universe is completely indifferent to any suffering you may have experienced or are experiencing in your life. The sun could just engulf the whole earth tomorrow, and the universe would not care that we are gone. It would shed no tears for us, just like it shed no tears for the dinosaurs when a random asteroid destroyed their entire world. Like you said, this is why people need religions to give them a comfortable lie to help them get through their lives. Joining a religion gives people a peace of mind and a sense of community. Alternatively, finding out the true meaning of life and existence will only lead you down the path to existential despair and depression. Which is why most people will avoid talking about those subjects at all cost, or quickly retreat behind whatever religion they cling to whenever those subjects are brought up. The world we live in can be a whole lot to deal with for one person, so I really relate to what you said about how you sometimes feel like you just want to hide from the world under your bed covers. All of it can be extremely overwhelming at times. It's like opening Pandora's box. Once you see how messed up the world really is, it's hard to just close your eyes and pretend it's not happening. It often becomes a day-to-day struggle, just to keep from being depressed about it all the time. I also relate to what you said about dying, too. I didn't ask to be born, but now that I'm here, knowing one day that my life will be forcefully taken from me against my will by disease, accident, or old age, makes me realize that just being alive is a cosmic joke.
I totally agree. The fact that we will all die one day makes life on an individual level completely pointless. All of the struggles that one has to go through, all of the things that they have to learn and overcome just to find their way in this world. Any accomplishments they may have in their lives, or the things they may learn along the way, will all be lost at the moment of their death. It's true that some individuals are remembered for the things they did in their lives, but that doesn't mean much to the individual that is already dead. I mean, do you think Albert Einstein really gives a damn about any of the accomplishments he made in his life, right at this moment? Of course not. He doesn't care about anything, because he's dead. It's inevitable that you will suffer just because you were born, just because you are alive, but when you die, all of the suffering that you have endured in your life becomes utterly meaningless. I know that you can make a counter-argument, saying that people like Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking will be remembered for their accomplishments, and that's true to a degree, but most people are not like Albert Einstein. Most people are just average people trying to get through their lives as best as possible, and they will be forgotten in 100 years, and no one will tell their stories, and no one will talk about the struggles that they went through. Think about all of the people that have been born, hundreds and hundreds of millions of people that are all dead now. Each one of them had their own story, their own life, their own personal struggles and personal accomplishments, lessons that they learned and things they overcame. All of those struggles mean nothing now, because those individuals are gone forever, and are almost forgotten by those who live now. Only a very small group of individuals will have their names and deeds remembered through time, like Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, Marcus Aurelius, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo Galilei, and Alexander Graham Bell, to name a few. Most people alive today will never be remembered like that, and even if somehow you were remembered long after your death, what difference does it make to you as an individual? You are dead, therefore you cannot care if someone remembers you or not. Whether or not your name is remembered and praised, or forgotten and lost in time, matters not, to a person who is already dead. They can never feel grateful or thankful that you remember them, or even sad that you have forgotten them, because they simply don't feel anything at all, and never will again, because they are dead. The point I'm trying to make is that death makes life completely pointless for the individual, if they are just going to inevitably lose everything that they worked for in the end. That is what makes life completely absurd to me. So, if you ever find yourself feeling full of resentment for being born in this world, know that you are not alone. It's not just a symptom of depression, like some people will tell you, it's that you have come to an understanding of the truth. That life itself is completely absurd and utterly stupid. Before I go, I just wanted to note that we have received 3 requests in the comments to do a Right to Die video. So the next video that we post should be us covering that subject to the best of our ability. So until next time, try to be safe, and may any suffering that you endure be minimal. Bye for now.